What does it mean to properly fill out your background packet or your PHS, police history statement, personal history statement, when becoming a police officer? Let's discuss. Hey, before we get started, I have two gifts in the description for you. One is the Getting Started workshop. It's going to walk you through every phase of the hiring process, plus there's some hidden bonuses in there I think you will like. Next is a coaching call with any member of my team, or even myself if you'd like, where we can sit down, go over your police hiring process, or maybe even your background packet, depending on what you need to cover. Now, filling out your PHS, right? Your personal history statement or your PHQ or your background packet, whatever your department's going to call it. It's a critical component. A lot of what you put down there is at that point in time, your official statement, I should say, it is your official statement of facts, right? Which is very critical in the legal concept. Now, a lot of people ask me questions about, Frank, if I admit to something on here that I've done in the past, such as, illegally use a substance, am I going to get in trouble for that? Am I going to go to jail? No, that's not the case. That's not what it's there for. I'm not saying that if you didn't commit a major crime like a bank robbery and then you admit to it on a PHS, it's not going to be investigated. Excuse me. No, I'm not saying that. It definitely probably will be, but you probably shouldn't be applying to become a law enforcement officer if you were involved in a bank robbery. But no, things like, excuse me, still getting over a cold. Things like, minor theft in the past, even, substance use, that none of that's going to be used to get you in trouble, and it shouldn't be used to get you in trouble. And a lot of times that's written on the documents that these are documents intended for verification and facts, not for criminal whatever. That aside, right? Everything can always be changed. But from a direct point where we're going with this one is you should be honest always on all your documentation, always. Be specific, don't elaborate. Stick to the facts of the situation, not your perspective. Don't be like, hey, yeah, I received a speeding ticket for going, 80 in a 40, or I received a speeding ticket exceeding the speed in a 40-mile-an-hour zone. And, okay, how fast were you going? 80. But you were clocked at 60, right? No, the facts are you received a ticket for 60 in a 40. That's what you would list on your background packet. If you believed you were going 80, that is not the facts of the situation, right? The facts are the officer, whoever stopped you, clocked you at 60 in a 40, and that's what this ticket was issued, and that's what you pled guilty to or contested or whatever. Don't go 80 in a 40, right? Drive the speed limit. But you get what I'm saying. The concept here, and what I really want to get into, is being dishonest on this form. And it's not just this form, on any other official form. I'm going to kind of pivot real quick and hit a caveat. I deal with a lot of individuals who are former military, right? Either current or former military looking to transition to law enforcement. And a lot of people who aren't military can kind of get discouraged sometimes, where they say, oh, veterans get preference. Not always true. Excuse me. Not always true. Matter of fact, sometimes joining the military can be a detriment to pursuing your career in law enforcement. And not that it's an immediate disqualifier, but it's a detriment. And here's why. Military recruiters are atrocious, horrendous. I'm speaking from experience, right? They don't tell the truth, and they lie, and they manipulate. That being said, they will try to get candidates to lie. So perfect example is they will tell a candidate, if candidate goes into a recruiter's office, says, hey, I want to join the Army, or I want to join the Navy, or I want to join the Marines, or Air Force. That's a military branch. I'm just joking. But They say I want to join a military branch, and they go into the recruiter, and the recruiter says, "Cool, all right, give me some background on you. Let's take a practice ASVAB, see where you score. What do you want to do? I want to do, let's go to Air Force. I want to fly drones. All right, cool. You got a good ASVAB score. What about criminal history in the past or substance use? Have you ever consumed marijuana?" And they say, "Yes, I've consumed marijuana." And they're like, "No, you haven't." Person's like, "Yeah, yes, I have." They're like, "No, you haven't. You're just going to put no on that." And people, they're like, "Don't worry, this is always how we do it." But that's an official government form that you're lying on. Now, you're being directed to lie on it, and you don't know any better, and we can articulate that later during your police PHS, but a lot of them are advised to lie on forms. Now, I'm not saying it always happens, right? But a lot of them are, like I said, are advised by the official to be dishonest on those forms. That can come back to bite them, not only in the military, but then in their law enforcement career too. Once you get high enough in military, if you're getting after certain clearances, you'll have to take a polygraph in the military sometimes for certain clearances and for certain jobs. Well, most law enforcement have a polygraph, right? So that's one aspect of it. And one of the questions on a polygraph is, have you been honest and truthful, or have you ever lied on a government or an official form? Or have you ever lied to an official in any capacity? And they have caveats, right? So don't think you can legalese and mental gymnastics around this. There's caveats on top of caveats on top of caveats. So it's best to just be honest and upfront from the beginning, but to be able to articulate strictly the facts. So if I was going to say articulate that scenario that I just came up with, I would articulate it as such. Have you ever lied on a government form? Yes, while applying to or while filling out my military documents for medical, or for MEPS is what it's called. I was advised by my recruiter to not disclose my prior marijuana use. And that's how I would articulate it, right? And you're like, "Frank, man, you're throwing them under the bus." They did that to your career, right? Or they attempted to. I mean, like I said, it's not always going to be, or it's not typically a disqualifying factor depending on the scale of things, right? And the time and distance from it. But it's another hurdle that got thrown in the way, all because some advisor who you trusted pointed you in the wrong direction. And I've seen this in law enforcement too. If you're talking to law enforcement officers from the 90s and or 80s and 90s and maybe even early 2000s, I've seen them advise candidates to just lie. Just go in there, hey, don't disclose that. If you've never been caught, don't disclose it. Yeah, that doesn't fly these days, because at any point in time that any person in the hiring process, whether that be the polygrapher during the polygraph, the background investigator, the psychologist, the board, whatever, gets an inclination that you may not be disclosing the whole truth, they're just not going to move forward with it. And they don't even have to tell you why. And ask any person who's been denied by a department. Says, "Hey, unfortunately, you didn't make it through this. You didn't pass this. We found an issue here. Oh, can you disclose what it was?" Nope, we don't have to. And that's what they're going to tell you. And so your issue then becomes, what was it? Like, where did I mess up? If you lie, if you omit, right? Omission is what you'd be disqualified if you fail to disclose something. So lying is stating the opposite. Omission is failing to disclose, which is still lying. The major problem with candidates with that, if that happens, you're kind of frying your career. Now, is there a chance that if you omit something in the past and get caught, and you will get caught, and you get caught, is it going to affect you applying to the next department? Probably, because one of the things that they do on every background packet is have you list every department you ever applied to. Guess what? If you lie about that, automatic disqualifier. Usually a permanent disqualifier if you lie about previous departments you've applied to in the past. And the reason why is because they're going to contact those departments and they're going to say, "Hey, I'm calling about this guy, Frank Magaha. He's applying. I see he applied to you guys, but I see he didn't make it through the process. What's going on? And they're not technically supposed to like hand over or disclose anything. But I've seen departments walk in and then you're sitting down with your background investigator and they say, yeah, I have your PHS here from XYZ department. That shouldn't happen. Shouldn't, but this is the real world and it does, right? That other department should get in a lot of trouble for handing over that full PHS that's submitted in confidentiality. But it's unrealistic to think like, hey, I call, I'm the recruiter and I call my buddy over at the next town over or somewhere else in the state and say, hey, I got this applicant, Frank Magaha, applying. What's going on? Why didn't you guys pick him up? Yeah, let me look at his file real quick. Yeah, it looks like he took the polygraph and then we cut him loose after that. And that's perfectly fine. Okay, so I can reasonably assume that this individual failed a polygraph. Or, hey, yeah, we were looking at his PHS and we found some other stuff that he failed to disclose. And then when we confronted him about it, we could tell that he was intentionally lying. He omitted. So we permanently DQ'd him, or we DQ'd him for 5 years. And then that department's going to determine at that point in time, do I even want to talk to you as an applicant? They might just blacklist you at that point in time. And that can go on. And if an omission is the big one that carries between departments, right? So lying is not in your best behavior. And then let's go to the future. And let's say you've been in for 15 years, right? You've had a decent career, right? You've done really well. You promoted. You're at 15-year mark and you get into a situation where you get a big case and it goes to court and they get a really good attorney. And that attorney has a really good investigator, which, by the way, don't think police are the best investigators out there. No. You become a law enforcement officer. People always exist, right? So a lot of people that leave law enforcement as a retirement gig, a lot of detectives or investigators go work as investigators for the private sector, specifically lawyers. So that lawyer has a really good investigator, and that investigator digs up way more than your background investigator did on the arresting officer, which say it would be you. And it comes to find out that you lied about, substance use, right, in the past. Not only are you going to lose the case, you might lose your job and your pension, right? Hopefully there wouldn't be criminal charges at that point in time brought up for lying, because that's a crime to lie on government documents. It happens. Google. But yeah, don't lie. Don't try to omit. Don't listen to anyone. It doesn't matter if it's a recruiter, an officer, a newer officer, an older officer. Don't listen. Just be honest and then articulate the facts. There's very few things out there that are permanent disqualifying factors. Matter of fact, we covered permanent disqualifying factors in another video. Just go over to our channel and watch that. But if you go in and you articulate the facts, then maybe a department will tell you no, right? But if you're eligible, maybe one department will tell you no. Maybe two departments will tell you no. But eventually a department will pick you up. And then that department that picks you up, you're going to be willing to work and be loyal to them and then work and support the community. I don't think, one, no person is perfect, right? So no person has a perfect background. Whether it's, I've never been arrested, I've never done drugs. No, but you've probably done some undetected crime at some point in time in your life, whether even as a kid or anything. And I would say for this, people are over here like, no, I never did. I'm literally like, you ever jaywalk? I'm joking. But the big factor here is if it's a permanently disqualifying factor, you're not going to be able to get into law enforcement anyway. But very few factors are permanently disqualifying. A lot of times, law enforcement departments want individuals that can actually relate to the community. I'm not saying you need to, like, hey, I'm in a rough part of LA, right? And I need to, be prior gang member to, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying at some point in time, it's easier to build rapport with your community members or have empathy for your community members if you've been in a relatable circumstance. Say you stop someone for, their insurance expiring, right? And they made a mistake, and you can choose to write them a ticket, or you can look back at yourself and say, you know what? I remember when my insurance expired because I was 20 years old and it was the first time having my own insurance, and I didn't realize I had to pay a premium every 6 months or every year or every month or whatever it was, and it expired. Or I was really hard on cash and I was financially struggling, and I couldn't, and my payment bounced, right? You're going to be able to relate to your community a little bit better, and you're going to be able to say, hey, do I really need to write this person a ticket right now and put a bigger financial burden on them? Much like the position I was in at that, or can I use officer discretion? Actually, I'll kind of pivot here to a quick story. There was a point in time where I was working in the park, and I got a call from one of the. I was just coming out of the backcountry, and I got a call from one of the campground hosts, and dispatch said, "Hey, respond to this host. Apparently, there's an issue." And I show up, and I see they're like, "Yeah, there's people over there in the picnic pavilion eating lunch, and they don't have a reservation." I'm like, okay, is there another party waiting that has a reservation? And they say no. And this campground host, had went up and borderline harassed them, almost like trying to tell them leave. And this campground host was taking their role very seriously, as they should, but they were exceeding their authority, so to say. And so they sent, and I'm like, what do you want me to do? And they're like, well, they need to leave. They don't have a reservation. I was like, well, the pavilion is open for use. It's like, even without a reservation. And they saw a law enforcement officer walking up to them. And I probably did not look good. I would just spent 5 days in the backcountry. I probably didn't smell pretty either. But you could tell that it was a mother and her 2 children. And you can tell that they were struggling. They had their car loaded up. Looks like they were kind of moving across country. I don't know their entire circumstances, but they just stopped off, and you can tell this mom was distressed a little bit with her circumstances. And as I was walking up, she was like, "We're packing up. We'll leave. I'm sorry." And you could tell that she just wanted to stop. I don't know how long she'd been on the road for. I know she had mentioned she'd been driving for a while, and they were, like I said, relocating to another state. They just wanted to stop at a really pretty area, which was the national park, and have a lunch with her kids. I told her to stop completely. I actually sat down with them and asked if I could. I still had my lunch from for that day, and I sat down and had lunch with them. Could I have written them a ticket? Yeah, there was maybe a couple violations, but nothing that were probably crazy. Could I ran her license plate? Yes, I could have. But no, I was able to recognize the situation there, and recognize the hardship and have empathy. Right, I've had hardship in my life before. I could recognize the hardship that she had, and the struggle. And I wasn't even a parent at the time, but yeah, that's what I'm getting at. That's kind of what they're looking for with officers. That's my little tangent for this particular training. But when it comes going back to your background packet, don't think just because you have a hurdle in there that, hey, I'm the worst person in the world. Matter of fact, a lot of people that I see have the fewest hurdles are the ones that are struggle with it the most, because they've lived a very kind of, I don't want to say safe life, but they've lived a very straight and narrow life. And then maybe they do have maybe minor substance use, such as marijuana in the past, very minimal. Or maybe they, as a kid, they did take something, candy from a store. They're very embarrassed by it, and they don't want to disclose it, and they think it's the worst thing in the world, whereas it's not. Individuals get hired every single day with multiple hurdles, and they go on to be good, honest cops all the time. That's what we're here trying to do, is to help you do that. There's so many people that we talk to that say, man, I really want to get into law enforcement, but I just don't think I'd be a good fit because of X, Y, Z. And I'm like, those aren't disqualifying factors. It's disqualifying if you lie about it. but those aren't disqualifying factors. You meet the eligibility, and but I see the embarrassment that they have about, maybe just a minor hurdle, maybe one little indiscretion that they have had in their life, and it's a level of anxiety or stress that they have about disclosing it and talking about it. And I try to tell them it's not going to be a major factor. So there's a lot that goes into it, right? But I wanted to kind of come in here and do this particular discussion and training, because don't limit yourself, right? I mean, I've told plenty of people, hey, I don't think we can help you. You're not immediately disqualified, but the stack of things that you have would make it very difficult to get hired. But that is so rare between the individuals that I sit down and talk with, and that the team talks with the other instructors. So keep that in mind. If you've ever thought about pursuing this, and you're really ready to be proactive and go after it and ethical, pursue it. You probably got a good shot, better shot than you think. That being said, if you want to jump on a coaching call, you can go and sign up. Those links are in the description, where you can jump on a call with any of our instructors, or even myself if you'd like, as well as our Getting Started workshop, which will walk you through every phase of the hiring process. Plus, there's some hidden bonuses in there that might even let you know if you're eligible. Stay safe, and I will see you next time.